The moment I got that letter from the HOA, I couldn't believe my eyes. They were telling me to pack up and leave my own home. Can you imagine the nerve? Me, of all people, the man who worked his whole life to build this community, the man who fought for every streetlight, every playground, and every safe corner of the city. And here they were, treating me like some kind of outsider. I laughed at first. I really did. Because who would believe that an HOA, a homeowners association with a little bit of paper power, thought they could push me around? But the laughter quickly turned into anger. You see, this wasn't just about rules or fees. This was about respect. This was about principle. And it was about the fact that I'm not just a homeowner here. I'm the mayor of this entire city. The letter was written in bold, threatening words. They claimed I violated several HOA regulations. They said my yard was too political, my driveway too crowded, and my house not in harmony with the neighborhood style. Too political? I had an American flag, a small sign thanking veterans, and another one saying community first. If that's political, then what exactly are they standing for? My driveway? That's where my kids park when they come home for dinner. Not a car dealership, just family. And harmony? My house looks just like every other house on this street, except maybe mine has more flowers out front, because my wife loves them. But you know what burned the most? The way they tried to intimidate me. They acted like they had the power to strip me of my dignity, to uproot me from the very ground I helped build. I've been in politics long enough to know when someone is bluffing, and trust me, the HOA was bluffing big time. They had no clue who they were dealing with. I didn't run for mayor to sit in some fancy office and shake hands. I ran because I loved the city. Every brick, every tree, every neighbor, they matter to me. And when I read that letter, something inside me snapped. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about every hardworking person who has ever been bullied by an HOA. It was about every family that paid their dues, followed the rules, and still got harassed for no reason. I called an emergency meeting with my staff that very evening. My chief of staff, my city attorney, and even the police chief sat across the table, staring at me as I dropped the letter in the middle. I could see the disbelief in their eyes, too. They really don't know who they're messing with, my attorney muttered. And he was right, because this was about to become more than just a fight. It was about to become a message. The first thing I did was dig into the HOA's history. And oh, what a history it was. They had bullied retirees over lawn decorations. They had fined single moms for leaving bikes in the driveway. They even tried to stop a family from hosting a backyard barbecue because it was too loud. It was like they thrived on controlling people. They weren't building community. They were breaking it. I reached out to neighbors quietly at first. I asked them if they ever felt pressured by the HOA. What I heard broke my heart. One man told me he'd been fined $200 because his trash bin wasn't rolled back in time. Another woman said they threatened to sue her because her blinds were the wrong shade of beige. People were living in fear in their own homes. That's not community. That's tyranny in a suit and tie. But here's where it gets interesting. The more I listened, the more I realized the HOA wasn't just targeting me. They had been targeting everyone for years. They were a small group of power-hungry individuals who got off on bossing people around. And now, they picked the wrong person to push. You want to know what the real irony was? I had signed off on city permits that allowed their HOA board to exist in the first place. Without my approval years ago, they wouldn't even be recognized. The same mayor they tried to kick out was the one who gave them their stamp of legitimacy. Imagine that. So I started planning. This wasn't just about sending a lawyer's letter back. No, this was about pulling the mask off their entire operation. I wanted the city to see who they really were. I wanted every homeowner in my city to know they had rights, and they weren't at the mercy of a handful of self-proclaimed rulers. The next council meeting was packed. Word had spread that the HOA was after me, and people were curious. They filled the seats, waiting to hear what I had to say. I held up that letter and read it out loud. You could hear the gasps, the laughter, and the anger ripple through the room, because suddenly, people realized they weren't alone. One man stood up and said, "Mayor, They fined me $500 last year for leaving Christmas lights up too long. I couldn't afford it. A woman spoke through tears, saying, "They told me I couldn't plant a tree in honor of my late husband. They said it wasn't in their landscaping plan." Story after story poured out, and the room buzzed with frustration. That's when I knew this wasn't my battle anymore. It was everyone's. I leaned forward, gripped the microphone, and said, "If they think they can kick me out of my own city, what do you think they're doing to you? It ends now. Right here. Right today." The room erupted in applause. People were tired. People were angry. People were ready. And that gave me the fuel I needed to fight harder. You see, an HOA works only if people believe in its power. But when people wake up, when they stand together, that power crumbles. That's what I wanted to prove. That's what I wanted to show every single family who thought they had no choice but to obey. From that moment, I made a promise. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to dismantle the HOA's grip on this neighborhood. I was going to show them that no board, no committee, and no group of bullies could ever stand taller than the will of the people. And trust me, I wasn't just talking. I had a plan that would flip their world upside down. The HOA thought they were clever. They sent more letters, each one bolder than the last. One claimed I owed them thousands in fines. Another warned they would place a lien on my property. A lien on the mayor's house. They thought those words would scare me. They thought I'd fold like the others. But fear wasn't in my blood. Every letter they sent only lit a fire in me. I knew what they were really doing. They weren't just coming after me. They were testing me. If they could scare the mayor, then they could scare anyone. If they could silence me, then no one else would dare speak up. That's what bullies do. They go after the biggest target to send a message. But I wasn't going to be their trophy. I was going to be their downfall. I called my attorney again. "We're not just responding to them," I said. "We're going after them. Hard." He nodded and smiled. He knew exactly what I meant. Because here's the truth. HOAs love to act like they're above the law. But the law is very clear. They have limits. They can't do whatever they want. And once you shine a light on their abuse, their house of cards comes crashing down. So I started gathering evidence. Every unfair fine. Every threatening letter. Every story from neighbors who had been mistreated. We built a case so strong that even the best lawyer in the state couldn't defend them. But I didn't stop there. I went public. I spoke about it in interviews. I told local news stations exactly what was happening. And guess what? The story spread like wildfire. People love an underdog story. And this wasn't just a fight between me and the HOA. This was a fight between ordinary families and a group of bullies. Every headline read the same. Mayor battles HOA over abuse of power. Phones in my office rang nonstop. People from across the city, even outside the city, called to share their own HOA horror stories. Suddenly, this wasn't local anymore. It was bigger, much bigger. But with attention came pressure. The HOA doubled down. They hired their own lawyers. They sent out statements calling me unfit and a disgrace. They claimed I was using my position to avoid following rules. Oh, they painted me as the villain. But you know what they forgot? The people knew me. They had seen me fight for them year after year. They knew my heart. And no fancy press release was going to erase that. The more they attacked me, the stronger my supporters became. Neighbors started putting up signs in their yards. "We stand with the mayor." Kids drew chalk messages on sidewalks. "HOA can't push us around." Families who had been quiet for years suddenly found their voice. It wasn't just my fight anymore, it was ours. One day, an elderly woman came up to me after a town hall. She held my hand, her eyes full of tears, and said, "Mayor, they've been bullying me for years. I thought I was alone. Thank you for standing up to them." Her words shook me. That was the moment I knew, no matter how hard this battle got, I couldn't back down. I owed it to her. I owed it to every family. And trust me, the battle was hard. Court hearings, legal threats, endless paperwork. The HOA tried every trick in the book. They even sent private investigators to watch my house. hoping to catch me breaking some little rule. Can you imagine? The mayor of a city being stalked by his own HOA. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. But every time they tried to bring me down, I rose higher. I kept my focus. I reminded myself, this wasn't just about me. This was about sending a message that no homeowner should live in fear. And slowly, their cracks began to show. Their own members started questioning the board. People who once obeyed without question began asking, why are we paying so much in dues? Where is the money going? Why are we being treated this way? That's when I knew victory was coming. Because when people stop fearing, bullies lose their power. I'll never forget the day the judge finally spoke. After weeks of hearings, after mountains of evidence, the ruling came down. The HOA had overstepped. They had abused their authority. Their fines were unlawful. Their threats were baseless. The lien they tried to place on my property? Null and void. It was official. The HOA lost. The courtroom erupted in applause. Neighbors hugged each other. Reporters rushed forward. Cameras flashed. And I stood there, not as the mayor, but as a neighbor, as a father, as someone who simply refused to be bullied. But I didn't stop with one victory. No, I pushed for change. I introduced new city regulations to keep HOAs in check. They could no longer fine people for harmless things. They had to be transparent with their finances. They had to treat people with dignity and respect. And if they didn't, the city had the power to shut them down. That's how you fight bullies. You don't just beat them once. You take away their power to ever hurt people again. As I walked out of that courthouse, reporters shouted questions at me. One asked, Mayor, what's your message to HOAs everywhere? I smiled, looked right into the camera, and said, your power comes from the people. If you abuse them, you lose everything. Remember that. And that's exactly what happened. The HOA's reign of fear was over. Families could breathe again. Kids could leave bikes in the driveway. Veterans could hang their flags. Widows could plant trees. Life went back to what it should have always been, peaceful, free, and full of community spirit. The HOA tried to kick me out, but instead they woke up a city. They lit a fire they couldn't put out. They reminded everyone that no one, no matter how powerful they think they are, is above the people. And I promise you this, as long as I'm mayor, no HOA, no bully, no self-appointed ruler will ever push us around again. So, if you're listening to this and you've ever been bullied by an HOA, remember my story. Stand tall. Speak up. Don't let fear control you. Because the moment you push back, you'll realize they're not as strong as they pretend to be.